Okay, so today what we're going to do is make a Chinese barbecue, also known as char siu. And what we need is a piece of pork, and preferably one that has a little fat. So you don't really want to use sirloin. You want to use something that does have fat, and I usually do the shoulder or pork butt. So you can see that there are some parts of it that have fat in the middle of the meat. You don't want too much fat, but this is about right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is wash this and then start with the marinade. If there is excess fat that you do not want, you can always cut it off, but this one is somewhat lean, so I'm not going to do too much to that. Next, we're going to make the marinade. For the marinade, my secret marinade, I'm going to use the hoisin sauce and soy sauce, sugar. I am not going to be using the cornstarch, but instead I'm going to be using some ketchup and the usual ingredients here. So for this, I'm going to use about half a cup of hoisin sauce. And with the marinade, there's really not a precise amount. It's just general, so you can get the right proportions. If you like it spicy, you can add more spicy. If you like it sweeter, you can add more sugar. But I'm going to just give you a general guideline, and then you can tweak it from there. So if I have a half a cup of hoisin sauce, then I would use half that amount for ketchup. So I'm going to use about a quarter cup of ketchup. Okay, we have about a quarter cup of ketchup. And we'll need some salt and sugar. So I would say about a teaspoon of salt. And here I actually have garlic salt. And I would need about a teaspoon of that. And I would use about a teaspoon of sugar. Now normally what they say is that if you use half the portion of sugar to salt, so if you use 1 teaspoon salt and you use half a teaspoon of sugar, that gives you the same umami as MSG. So that is something to think about. But for this marinade, I'm going to just use equal portions of salt and sugar. And then we need some ground pepper. So probably about half a teaspoon of ground pepper. And about 1/8 of a cup of some kind of acid. So I'm going to do 1/8 of a cup of my whiskey. And I'm going to just stir this up. And I'm going to place my pork in here. So this one would be for char siu, but you can also use this marinade for barbecue ribs. And what I do is I take this marinade, I put it in a big Ziploc bag, take my pork ribs and throw it in the Ziploc bag and put it in the refrigerator for a day or two. You can also just freeze it in the Ziploc bag and then take it out when needed. So it's just the perfect time if you buy bulk pork ribs. You can marinate it, freeze it up, and then when you need it, just defrost it, and then it's really easy. So that's what it's going to look like. And I'll just cover it up, and it would be great if it could sit and marinate for at least 8 hours or overnight. Okay, now that our pork char siu has been marinating for overnight, we're going to go ahead and barbecue it. I'm going to actually use the oven to barbecue this, so it's not really barbecue. One of the things that we need to do is make sure we sear it So what happens when we sear it is that we are locking in all the juices in the meat so it's not seeping out as it's in the oven, basically creating a scab as we sear. If you don't have a searer in your oven, what you can do is use a cast iron skillet and heat it up till it's really hot, and then just go and turn the meat on all sides so that it pretty much browns it, and then you'll put it in the oven. But in order to go in the oven, what we need to have is a tray, like a grilling tray, and one that has perforations. So what we want to do is, in essence, have the meat be on top here, and as it cooks, there's some of the fat that's going to be dripping down. We don't really want it to sit in the fat. On the other hand, we don't really want too much cleanup, so what I'm going to do is just take some foil and line the pan with foil, and what I'm going to do is pour some water in here, and what that does is keep your meat moist while it's in the oven. Okay? And I would highly recommend, if you don't have a grilling pan, that you use some kind of metal tin pan or something like that, and not use Pyrex. What happens with Pyrex is that it just doesn't get hot enough, so you don't really create any steam. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to take out the pork that's been marinating. So it looks all yummy like this. And I'm going to put it on here. And throughout the cooking process, we will need a baster or some tongs if you don't have a brush, and we'll be basting it regularly. Now my oven has a searer, and once the sear is on, I'm going to sear it until all the sides are pretty much seared. As we sear it, so when you sear it, you'll see it looks brown. I'm going to just turn it over, sear it again on this side. Now that it's seared, what you want to do is baste it with your marinade so that it keeps getting tasty. And once it's seared, you can actually just put it in the oven at about 300 degrees. And you could put in a thermometer until it reads . As an option to our barbecue pork, we're going to have our barbecue pork with Chinese buns. You can find these in the supermarket. These normally come with Peking duck in a restaurant, but we're going to use them for our barbecue pork. So this is how they look, and they can split open. And all we need to do is steam a few of them. Okay, so I'm going to just put 4 in right now, and then show you what it's going to look like. Okay, with our barbecue pork bun, what we're going to do is, it's all a matter of different textures. You want to have your mouth feel like there's fireworks going on, so you want crunchy and smooth. You want a little bit of spicy and sweet, or sweet and sour. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have these cucumbers. We're going to thinly slice them so that can be the crunch in our roll or in our bun, because the bun really has very soft texture. So what I'm going to do is cut cut the cucumber very thinly sliced. Okay. So that's going to be the way it's going to look. So we're going to have very thinly sliced cucumbers. It's going to look like that. And you can choose to have just a little bit of jalapeno or serrano. This really gives it a kick. So kind of, and you're not going to use too many in there. It's just, I'm going to show you. So that's kind of what we're going to have. And then the cilantro just gives it a freshness. So we're going to just put a few little leaves of cilantro within each bun. So I'm going to just show you how to do that. It's probably enough for 4. Okay, I'm going to take it out, and this is what it's looking like. And it's not as red as you'd find in the restaurants because we just don't have any of that dye. So I'm going to be putting it over there. We're going to have it cool just a little bit. And then I'm going to be using my different tongs, a different set of tongs, and I'm going to just plate the Chinese rolls. It's been steaming, and I've only made 4. So that. So it's really juicy. What I have here in my bowl is a little bit of hoisin sauce, and I'm going to open it up. Just put some hoisin on each one. And I'm going to put a piece of pork. Okay. Now for the crunch. 1 little bit of cucumber. For 2 of them, I'm going to use the generic pickles, so that's always an option. So just put one here, look like that, and maybe a little more crunch, so you'll have to put 2 on this. And then you'll put some cilantro. And your jalapeno. And this is your barbecue pork with Chinese rolls.